What's up, everybody? A very happy Tuesday here on the Refuse to Lose Territory podcast. Brady Farkas with you, as always, your Refuse to Lose Territory host. You can always follow the show on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify and on YouTube. All of those places are 100% free, but we do appreciate all of your subscriptions and anyone who hits the follow button, so helps the show grow and helps spread the word. So appreciate all of you who are already doing that and those of you who will do it in the future. For those of you who want to read all of our work, you can at marinersroundtable.com. Myself and Taryn Kovac will cover more than 100 games by the time this year is all said and done, and hopefully there's some more in October as well. But all of our content, marinersroundtable.com, that is also free. We invite you to join our free community there. That's kind of our message board style conversation. So join in, have your thoughts heard. You can really get in touch with myself or Taryn anywhere. So appreciate all of you who are doing that too. And again, those of you who will do it in the future. I am recording this on Monday night for release on Tuesday. As we stand, the Mariners are 59-66, 7 games under 500, but they are just 4 games back in the American League West after beating the Astros this weekend in 2 of 3. The entirety of the AL West is off on Monday, so the Mariners will remain 4 games back of Houston and 2 back of the Texas Rangers as well heading into play on Tuesday. The Mariners are also 2.5 games back entering play on Monday in the wild card race, but there are teams in front of them in action, so that might change by the time you listen to this on Tuesday. But they entered play on Monday at 2.5 back. No guest today after my travels to New York, after a great sit-down with Dave Sims. I thought it was a good chance for us to just reconnect here one-on-one, so we'll do just that today. And there's a lot to talk to. I also didn't think we really needed a guest today. So without further ado, let go.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And here we go.
You know, one of my favorite sayings, one of my favorite things to say in life, but certainly in this business, is 2 things can be true at the same time. You deal with this in your everyday life. Everybody wants everything to be only one way, good or bad, black or white, right or wrong. Everybody wants it to be one way. That way of thinking just exhausts me to the fullest. I like understanding that there's nuance to things. I like knowing that there is a little bit of gray area, and sports is one of the places where nuance exists most. So, with regards to the Mariners, I give you the following. 2 things can be true at the same time. Yes, the Mariners are still 4 games back in the division. They still have the Texas Rangers to jump before they even get to the Astros. Even though we think that the final 20 games or so of the regular season are incredibly easy, and on paper they are, the next 15 or so are very, very difficult. It is quite possible that the Mariners play quite poorly over those 15 games and end up out of the playoffs. It's quite possible the Mariners play poorly in these final 15 games and finish the season 500. It's quite possible that they play average and do what we think they need in the last 15 games and someone else gets hot and separates. All of that is 100% possible, and I recognize that. But also, so that's number 1. But number 2, what is also true is this series in Houston against the Astros was my favorite series of the year for the Mariners. Now, they swept the A's in Sacramento in May, and that was fun. They swept Houston for 4 games in April, and that was fun too. But this was my favorite series of the year. Why? Because it showed a resilience and a toughness that many people wondered if they even had. I remember many times, if you go back to the archives from 2025 and listen to a lot of shows from last year, I remember constantly saying the phrase, I don't know if the Mariners are good yet, but I do know that they're resilient. I said that a bunch in 2025. And you know what? They just hadn't been as resilient this year. Now, I've pushed back all season on the notion that guys don't care, or that guys haven't been trying, or that guys have senioritis, or that guys got paid and just packed it in. I have always felt that those takes were garbage. But it has been fair to acknowledge that the Seattle Mariners have not had the magic that they had last year, this year. This series against the Astros showed that thing that the Mariners have been missing. Now, look, I'll be honest. Friday night's loss was awful, was devastating, but I've seen worse losses for the Mariners this year. Okay, there were I could think of 3 to 4 worse losses for the Mariners than the loss on Friday night, right? The loss against San Diego in April where you blow a 6-1 lead in the ninth, the loss against Cleveland in June, the loss against Detroit in June. I think all of those losses were worse than what we saw on Friday night, but no loss was more devastating than what we saw on Friday night. And if the Mariners had just folded up shop, right? We go into Saturday, and the Mariners are 6 games back in the division. If the Mariners had just folded up shop on Saturday and Sunday, I think everyone would have been disappointed, but I don't think anybody would have been surprised. It's kind of human nature when you get punched in the mouth after throwing your best haymaker and it's still not good enough. It's kind of human nature oftentimes to lie down. So on Saturday and Sunday, for the Mariners to get up off the mat and deliver in both of those games, in both of those situations, it says something. It doesn't mean that they're going to play well in the next 15 games. It doesn't mean they're going to play well in the next 3. But it does mean that they haven't given up. It does mean that they have a resilience that a lot of people question. It was impressive stuff from the Mariners. It was impressive from the offense to get out to early leads. It was impressive for the offense to force Hayden Wesneski and Hunter Brown out of the game after 5 innings. It was impressive for Andres Munoz to come back after what we saw on Friday and get the job done on Sunday. It was impressive for Bryan Woo for his second consecutive time on this road trip to face his road demons. Impressive stuff for Seranthony Dominguez out of the bullpen. And again, impressive stuff from Munoz. These were 2 character wins in every sense of the word. Does it mean anything ultimately about where the Mariners land? Maybe, maybe not. But for a weekend, it showed what this team has been lacking, and that is why it was my favorite series of the year. They got ahead. They played from ahead. They came back. They got valuable contributions from up and down the lineup from guys you expect and from guys you didn't expect. They got relatively good starting pitching, relatively good bullpen work for the most part. And again, they showed that special ingredient that hasn't been there far, far too often. I've got more takeaways on the Mariners series against the Astros. We'll get to them right after these words from our friends over at SeatGeek. All right, you already know when I talk about SeatGeek, I'm talking about the best place to go and get Major League Baseball tickets for the stretch run. Mariners and Cubs this weekend, Mariners and Phillies next week. As I just told you, the Mariners are not dead. They're only 4 back in the division. If they can hang tight through Milwaukee, you're going to get a chance to see them at T-Mobile Park in some games that really do matter and really do mean something. With more than 35 million downloads, SeatGeek is the #1 rated ticketing app. There are more than 70,000 events listed on SeatGeek, including concerts, sports, festivals, and more. Remember, SeatGeek is MLB's official ticket marketplace. That means that your tickets are fully guaranteed and instantly fulfilled in your account after purchase. I love using SeatGeek. I've used it for concerts. I've used it for games. You can see it on my phone right now. Look at the salmon-colored app right there. It's called SeatGeek. It has your back. Each ticket is rated on a scale of 1 to 10, so you know you're getting a good deal. So look for green dots. Green means good, red means bad. And of course, you already know, as always, that I have a code for you. That code is Territory10 for 10% off your next set of MLB tickets at SeatGeek. That's 10% off any MLB tickets with promo code Territory10. Make sure you click the link in the description to download the app and have the code automatically added to your account so you can use it later. Thank you, as always, to our friends over at SeatGeek. All right, back into it here. There were a lot of things, as I just told you, that really stood out from this series win against the Astros. But one thing that really stood out to me was just how important Brendan Donovan is to this team. Okay? the offense this weekend was functioning as it's supposed to. And I believe there's a direct correlation between that and between Brendan Donovan being healthy and being at the top of the order. Now, I saw Brendan Donovan in New York against the Yankees for 3 games prior, and Brendan Donovan was hitting in the 7th spot, I believe, in all 3 games. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe he was down at the bottom of the order all 3 games. And he didn't do a whole lot. Hit into a double play here in a big spot. I think he hit into 2 big double plays in that series. Didn't quite look comfortable. He looked comfortable in this series, and when he's comfortable and healthy, you saw the lineup function exactly as it was designed to. Now, it wasn't just Brendan Donovan. Randy Arozarena had a good series. And yes, Cal Raleigh had a home run. And Victor Robles was great. And Brock Rodden did a lot of nice things. But I think Brendan Donovan was driving this thing. He was 4 for 14 in the series, but he only struck out 1 time. From the top of the order, he worked long at-bats. He made pitchers work. He had 4 RBIs in this series. He had a couple of big hits on Saturday in a game that the Mariners needed, and they needed to separate from in a couple of times. Again, 4 RBI. You are seeing what this offense was supposed to be with him as the spearhead of it all. This is what we call lengthening the lineup, right? Too many times, it's not just the Mariners, but too many times when a lineup goes cold, you'll see where there's only 2 or 3 guys that a lineup or that a rotation fears, that a pitching staff fears. Everybody else is just kind of there. Well, the Mariners, when they're at their best, they're supposed to be a lineup that can go 7 or 8 deep to make you uncomfortable. So look at the lineup now. Again, it's a small sample size of just 3 games. I know it doesn't guarantee future success, but Brendan Donovan leading off. You see him driving pitch counts, putting the ball in play, making the defense work, making the pitcher uncomfortable, and getting base hits. So now that he's in the leadoff spot and doing well, you know who's not in the leadoff spot? Randy Arozarena, Cole Young. What are they able to do? They're able to be dropped down, and now each spot in the order has a chance to be more productive because, again, the talent is more spread out, the ability is more spread out, and up and down the lineup, there are more chances, right? We're talking about this lineup when it's going right, and you're talking about Donovan and Arozarena and Julio. And by the way, Josh Naylor's hitting .326 since the All-Star break. So Naylor's in there and Young is in there. That's 5 right off the bat. Okay, that is 5 guys right off the bat that we're feeling pretty good about. Then you throw in Cal. Then you throw in Rodden, who had a nice series. You throw in Victor Robles, and you're just starting to see the lineup do what it was designed to do. And that is impressive to see, right? That is impressive to see because this lineup has the ability to go 6 or 7 deep, and I think Brendan Donovan being here is a huge part of it. Now, if he can keep it going over the final 6 weeks of the season, then you're talking about a lineup that has a chance to combat some of the excellent pitching the Mariners are going to see over specifically the next 15 games. Again, it's going to be difficult. 3 in Milwaukee, 3 with the Cubs, 3 with Philly, 3 with Toronto, and 3 with Boston. 4 of 5 of those teams are currently playoff teams. Boston and Philly have excellent starting pitching. Milwaukee has excellent starting pitching. So, can they keep it up? I don't know, but I think it's a direct correlation between Brendan Donovan being back healthy and comfortable and what we saw this weekend. Let's also here talk about Bryan Woo for a moment. So Bryan Woo leaves the game on Sunday at 75 pitches. We're told after the game by Bryan Woo that he had some shoulder discomfort. Now, is that the exact reason that Bryan Woo was taken out early? Probably, although I was actually fine with him being taken out anyways, given that the Astros were well into the 3rd time through the order. But let's talk about the injury stuff for a second. So here's the situation. Bryan Woo in the 6th, there's nobody on. The Mariners are leading 3-2. He strikes out Yordan Alvarez. So there's 2 outs and nobody on. He then hits Isaac Paredes in the leg with a fastball. Now, the ball hits Paredes' leg and relays to Cal Raleigh and hits Cal Raleigh in the arm. So the trainer comes out, and I immediately assume that the trainer is coming out for Cal Raleigh, that it's ricocheted and hit his left arm, and that's who the trainer's for. But the trainer actually goes to Bryan Woo. Bryan Woo stays in the game, gets the next out. I believe it was Jose Altuve. Now, only a couple of pitches. The velocity was still good, 94 to 96 for Bryan Woo in that next at-bat. Bryan Woo says after the game he had a little bit of shoulder discomfort, but he's not too concerned about it. Couple of things here from me on this. Anytime a pitcher tells me they're having some discomfort, I am going to be concerned for them. So, yes, I am naturally nervy about what Bryan Woo had to say after this outing. But I am choosing not to be overly concerned yet. Why? Because the Mariners let him stay in the game. And regardless of what you think about the Mariners and how they handle injuries, I do believe in a lot of ways they are pretty conservative when it comes to injuries, especially with pitchers. We saw Logan Gilbert taken out last year at the first sign of any trouble in that game against the Marlins in late April. Sure, it was late April, not mid-August. I understand that. They took Logan Gilbert out at the first sign of any issue. We've seen them be extra protective on the injured list with Bryce Miller and with George Kirby in 2025, especially Kirby. We saw them take Emerson Hancock out in the first inning of the game against Tampa after he tried to field that comebacker. They took him out right away, or right after the first inning, I believe. Now they took him out in the middle of the inning, I believe. I was there in Houston last year. It was Friday night, September 19th. I remember it like it was yesterday. That series in which the Mariners ended up sweeping the Astros, that was a must-win series, and Friday night was game one of it. And Bryan Woo had thrown 5 shutout innings, and he goes out for inning number 6 in his warm-ups, and something wasn't right. They took him out instantly. So in a must-win game in September, the Mariners took Bryan Woo out of a game at the first sign of injury, at the first sign of discomfort. The history right now of the Mariners, at least recently, in the Dan Wilson era, is that they are going to play this stuff extra conservative with their pitching staff. I saw them take out Andres Munoz in Washington after 2 batters with what ended up being back spasms. Maybe it was 3 batters, but they took him out right away, essentially. The fact that they let Bryan Woo stay in gives me some confidence and some optimism. Ultimately, what matters is how Bryan Woo felt Monday on the off day and how he feels Tuesday at the ballpark. We will not know that until the media gets there on Tuesday. But right now, I am choosing to be more optimistic about things. The history that I've seen in how the Mariners handle their pitchers is that they have been conservative, whether it's a big spot or a little spot, early in the season or later in the season, winning or losing. I have seen them be conservative with their pitching injuries. So I am choosing to not be overly worried about this, but I'm always going to be concerned when a pitcher tells me there has been some discomfort in their throwing arm. Now, the Mariners have a day off on Monday, so that means they have an extra day for Bryan Woo to get right. Maybe that extra day is enough. You certainly hope that it is. But if it's not enough, if this is something more to be worried about, then you are absolutely on Cade Anderson watch. Bryan Woo is supposed to start on Saturday. Cade Anderson typically starts on Friday. It would line up for Cade Anderson to take Bryan Woo's spot. I certainly hope that it doesn't end up in that place. I want Cade Anderson to make his debut just like you do, but not at the expense of Bryan Woo and not at the expense of Bryan Woo's health. The Mariners need Bryan Woo down the stretch here to be the Bryan Woo of 2025, and he can't be that if he's injured. So, but if he is injured, we're absolutely on Cade Anderson watch, and they do line up very, very well. Interesting kind of tabloid stuff on the Mariners this week, right? I'm pumped about how they played on the field this weekend. There's a lot of off-the-field conversation as well. We'll get to that next.
For the families out there looking for a new path to help your child succeed, take a look at K-12 powered schools. K-12 offers tuition-free accredited online public education for students in kindergarten through 12th grade. It's all in a setting that works for your family. And K-12 has been around. They've been a leader in online education for over 25 years, serving over 3 million families with flexible education options tailored to each child's needs, interests, and goals for the future. K-12's dedicated teachers are trained in virtual instruction, and they provide real-time support. Hey, we've heard Todd Father on here talk about how his kids have gone through homeschooling, and it's really helped them for a family that is very much on the move during his playing career. So you can see how K-12 powered schools can help unlock your child's full potential. Enroll online today at k12.com/FOUL. That's the letter K, the number 12.com/FOUL. K12.com/FOUL.
All right, let's talk about Dan Wilson's future, and let's talk about it maybe in a different way than we've talked about it in the past. Bob Nightingale of USA Today reported on Sunday that Dan Wilson will be fired if the Mariners don't make the playoffs. If you're watching on YouTube, you see it on your screen. In the American League, Seattle Mariners manager Dan Wilson is expected to be fired if the Mariners miss the playoffs, and the same goes for Houston Astros manager Joe Espada. That was Bob Nightingale of USA Today. First and foremost, this report, it does move the needle for me. It does not move the needle for everybody. It moves the needle for me. There are people out there who question Bob Nightingale's reporting. I've never met Bob Nightingale. I have only spoken to him one time. It was several years ago. I cannot speak to his ability to verify or not verify things directly. But just so you know, he does have a reputation that people will question some of his reports. I don't know him well enough to do that, but that is out there. Regardless, though, this moves the needle for me. Seeing this in writing is different than speculation. Seeing it in writing is different than speculation. We can all talk about whether or not Dan Wilson should be fired. We can all talk about whether he deserves to be fired. We can all speculate as to whether he'll be back in 2027. To see it in writing, it just lands different for me, because once it's in writing, now I have to imagine that Dan Wilson is going to be asked about it. And this is something he's never had to deal with before. How he handles it, I think, is a story. Dan Wilson got the job in 2024, went 21-13. There was very little adversity for him at that time coming off the Scott Service firing. Last year, though there was adversity for sure, he ends up 90-72, and I don't remember anybody calling for his job in season. Now, some people did after Game 7, but there was no having to defend myself against these rumors all year last year. This is now different for Dan Wilson. I imagine he's going to be asked about it. I imagine his players will be asked about it. That inherently just makes it different. As someone who's been in the Mariners clubhouse a bunch of times in the last 2 years and been at spring training and been around the players, you just know that when people are talking about this kind of stuff and they get asked about it, it's going to land differently. And how they handle it and what they say is going to be noteworthy. I am surprised to see this in writing. I don't know where Bob Nightingale got this. I don't know if somebody fed it to him. I don't know how well sourced he is. I don't know any of that. But I am surprised to see this in writing. Now, I don't think that this is necessarily groundbreaking reporting. I think that if the Mariners do miss the playoffs, I think that there's a very high probability that there will be a mutual parting of ways here between the Mariners and Dan Wilson. I don't think that it will be framed as a firing if Dan Wilson's not back. But if they do miss the playoffs, I've said for a while now, I don't think that Dan Wilson would be back. But to see it in writing, I do think it's a big deal. I continue to believe, as I have said over and over again, and some of you vehemently disagree with, I continue to believe that Dan Wilson deserves this full season. I continue to think that the Seattle Mariners deserve a full picture in front of them. A very good year in 2025. What so far has been a disappointing year in 2026. I believe they deserve a full picture here. And at the end of this season, there needs to be an evaluation of the organization as a whole. And Dan Wilson is obviously a part of that. So I've always believed in having the full picture in front of me. If the Mariners don't make the playoffs, I would say I think right now I lean heavily towards Dan Wilson not being back. But again, that's all been speculation and conjecture. This is actually in writing, and that makes it different. And now we're going to go and talk about it with Buster Olney on Thursday. And now, so people are going to start the conversation, and it's going to filter to the players eventually as well, and we're going to see how they respond. I do think, by the way, it's always a little different when I go cover the team in person, right? Because, again, I'm not there every day. I kind of parachute in. And I like the way Angie Mentic said that a couple weeks ago to me. She said, Brady, you parachute in. And that's right. What I gathered and continue to gather from my trip to New York last week is that the Mariners players, they do like Dan Wilson. Like, I don't believe that's lip service. When Logan Gilbert goes on KJR and talks about how much he loves Dan, I don't believe that's lip service. This team genuinely does like him. There is a performance element to this, of course, and if the team doesn't perform, then yeah, you do have to reevaluate. But I do think they like him, and as they're getting asked about this, I think you're going to hear more and more how much they like him, because Dan Wilson is a guy that I've never heard anybody say anything bad about inside that clubhouse. I will say this because I believe in the value of being honest. As I have defended Dan Wilson much of the year, I could not defend the bullpen decision with Michael Rucker last Tuesday in New York. I am at least questioning the bullpen decision in Sunday night's game, even though the Mariners won, right? And again, I think it's fair to be transparent. Just because I genuinely like Dan Wilson and I genuinely believe he deserves to keep his job through the entirety of this season, it does not mean that everything is perfect, and it doesn't mean you can never question anything. Let me take you back to the 8th inning here, right? So Bryan Woo comes out after 6. Edward Bizardo has the 7th. Even without the injury, I had no problem with Bryan Woo being taken out of the game. None. We were 3 times through the order and heading for 4, and the swings were getting a little better. So I had no issue with Bryan Woo being taken out. I had no issue with Edward Bizardo getting the 7th. Then you go to the 8th. The Astros had 9, 1, and 2 coming to the plate. 9 and 1 were scheduled to be right-handed hitters. Dan Wilson went with Gabe Spire. I had no problem with that either. 9 was supposed to be Nick Allen. The Astros pinch hit for him with Nelson Velasquez. Gabe Spire gets him out. He then gets Jeremy Pena out on a fly ball to left. So I had no problem with Gabe Spire coming in facing 2 right-handed hitters. Absolutely none. I wanted him there for the Alvarez matchup. I understand how good Spire is. He's got to be able to get right-handers out. He's done it before. I had no problem with that. Alvarez hits a single. Where I then had the issue was that Gabe Spire was allowed to pitch to Isaac Paredes. And Paredes ended up singling as well. And I felt the Mariners got away with one there. Because Paredes is a dead red hitter. He's a dead fastball hitter. He's a dead pull hitter. And he's a guy who hits lefties incredibly well. And he had just the day before hit a Jose Ferrer fastball to the moon. Like out of the ballpark type stuff. So he had killed a lefty's fastball the day before, and Jose Ferrer has a better fastball than Gabe Spire. Now, I could have had Andres Munoz in the 8th, but if you didn't want to do that because you didn't want him up too much and he had thrown a lot of pitches on Friday in the loss, I can understand that. But you brought Seranthony Dominguez in the next batter anyways to face Altuve. So if you were going to bring Dominguez in one batter later to face a righty in Altuve, I would have brought Dominguez in one batter earlier to face Paredes. It ended up working, so all's typically well that ends well, and I've always said that managerial decisions are viewed through the prism of did it work? But in terms of process, I did not like that decision. It doesn't change my ultimate stance that Dan Wilson doesn't deserve to be fired, but as we think about things down the stretch, then I believe that that's a decision that could have been done differently. I think should have been done differently. And if we end up in that similar kind of situation again, I think there are other options on the table. Maybe it's Munoz for the last out in the 8th and then pitching the 9th. Maybe it's Munoz for the last out in the 8th and Dominguez gets the 9th. Maybe it's Dominguez right away. But I felt there was a better answer on the board overall. All right, let's get to the last thing here. And This is on the Colt Emerson story. So you're going to see a new graphic come up momentarily. But let me take you back to last week first. On Wednesday night in New York, Colt Emerson goes 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts. He also failed to get a bunt down. It was a really tough game offensively for Colt Emerson. I spoke to Colt Emerson on Thursday before the series finale. I played that for you on Friday's episode. Colt Emerson, I asked him about his approach. I asked him about kind of what he wanted to get out of the rest of the season. He was very, very short. Now, I don't think he was rude. I don't think he was mean. I think he was clearly frustrated, and he doesn't know me all that well right now. So after the game on Thursday, we find out that Colt Emerson is going to AAA. We talked about that on Friday. But on Friday, before the game against Houston, the Mariners call an audible, and Colt Emerson ends up getting sent to the injured list with left wrist inflammation. He's not going to AAA. He's going to the injured list. We find out over the course of Friday from Adam Jude of the Seattle Times that Colt Emerson has been playing hurt for a while. Now, we knew that Colt Emerson had a wrist issue in spring training. We knew that he had a wrist issue early in the season. We knew he had a cortisone shot back in April. We did not know clearly how much his wrist was still impacting him. So he's been playing hurt. Once he got sent to AAA and was no longer in a position to help the team, he told the team, hey, by the way, this has really been bothering me. Doesn't sound like he was making it as an excuse. Doesn't sound like he was having sour grapes. He's just now saying, hey, if we're going to pull back on this, let me pull back the curtain and tell you what's going on. Then the story comes out from Adam Jude, and Jerry Dipoto says that he wishes Colt Emerson would have been more upfront about this, right? And I'm going to put the graphic on the screen here. There's a bunch of quotes here from Jerry in this article. And this is not, the graphic on the screen is not the exact quote I want, but I'm paraphrasing. He said, I really wish he would have said something. That's essentially what it was. And that quote alone sent Mariners Twitter into a tailspin. I had people arguing with me about it on Mariners Twitter. I had people saying that Jerry Dipoto threw the 21-year-old kid under the bus. How could he do that? Why is he talking bad about Colt? He's not talking bad about other players. Why is he choosing Colt Emerson to make his punching bag? Here's Jerry running his mouth again. Here's Jerry getting in trouble. Let's all back up for a second, and let's understand multiple things. Let's understand multiple things here, all right? As I just told you at the beginning of the episode, two things can be true at the same time. Number one, let's understand that baseball players play hurt. Baseball players play hurt all the time. This is not new. Luke Raley did it. Cal Raleigh's done it. Josh Naylor did it. Jorge Polanco played with a bum knee for all of 2024. It happens all the time. It is not just the Mariners. Guys play through injuries. Guys push surgeries until the offseason so they can keep playing. Guys get surgeries in the offseason for injuries we never even knew about. Players play. They want to play. They want to play because they love the game, they want to help the team, or they want to hold the job so that they can put food on the table for their families. Whatever the reason is, whatever their motivation is, guys want to play. If they were being sent out against their will, you would know about it from the Players Association. So that's number one. The Mariners are not committing organizational medical malpractice by having players play hurt. Players play hurt every day across all sports. The training staff does what it can to keep a player as healthy as possible and to keep them available. That's number one. Second off, if you are blaming the training staff for this or anything else, I think your anger is misguided. The training staff does the best it can with information that it has. It sounds like Colt Emerson was not being forthright, so that's not on the trainers. So I'm absolving the trainers of any issue as well. 3, Jerry Dipoto has the right to say this. Jerry Dipoto runs the front office. He has the right to sit here and say, I wish our guy would have been more up front. This seems matter of fact to me, by the way. It doesn't even seem critical. You people, or excuse me, some of you think that Jerry is throwing Colt Emerson under the bus. I don't see it that way. This seems just matter of fact to me. Do you see the graphic on your screen right now with quotes from Jerry in this article. He compliments Colt Emerson at every turn, saying he was as pro as you can be when we sat with him in New York. He could not have been more understanding. I think he understood where he was, and he took a breath and said, I really would like to have an updated look at my wrist. It's been a thing. Jerry Dipoto compliments Colt Emerson up and down this Adam Jude article, and then basically says, but we also would have liked him to be more upfront. That doesn't seem critical to me. That just seems like a guy being transparent. And whether you like it or not, Jerry Dipoto has tended to be transparent. You don't have to like what he's saying, but he has tended to be transparent. And I don't blame him for being transparent in this case. The tone, we're reading the words, not hearing them, but the tone does not sound critical to me. And even if it was, everybody has asked for the Mariners to hold people accountable in this offseason. Everybody is or in this season. We want to hear Dan Wilson hold guys accountable. We want Jerry to hold guys accountable. This is what accountability sounds like. I'm saying that our guy did something we wish he wouldn't have done. I don't have a problem with that. Again, it didn't sound to me malicious. But Brady, why doesn't he say anything about Naylor or Raley or Cal? Why doesn't he hold them accountable? Well, those guys have talked about their issues. Clearly, the training staff knows what their issues are. Colt Emerson wasn't forthright about this stuff. And look, I'm not mad at Colt Emerson either. In fact, I get the culture of wanting to play. I respect the guy who wants to be out there. I respect the guy who's just been paid and isn't trying to protect himself. I respect the guy who's 21 years old and toughing it out because he wants to help the team get where the team wants to go. I'm not upset with Colt Emerson at all. But this is a learning experience for Colt Emerson. And maybe that's part of the reason why Jerry Dipoto is saying this, right? He doesn't have to talk to Cal Raleigh or Josh Naylor or Luke Raley about their injuries. They've talked about it, and everybody understands. The training staff knows. The training staff doesn't know clearly all of what's going on with Colt Emerson. And Jerry Dipoto is saying, hey, we've got to be in the know here. This is a learning experience as far as I am concerned for Colt Emerson. There is a difference between playing hurt and playing injured. There's a difference between being tough and simply being smart. And Colt Emerson is in the process of learning all of that. So I don't have a problem with much of anything here. Colt Emerson wants to play. I respect that. Colt Emerson is too injured to play. He will learn the difference between being hurt and injured. I think that's an important learning distinction for him to go through. And he's getting on-the-job training, so hopefully the next time something's up, he will be more honest. And I don't have a problem with Jerry Dipoto using his words to help Colt Emerson learn that lesson. Jerry Dipoto gave Colt Emerson a $95 million deal before he'd ever played a big league game. I have to imagine there's a strong relationship there. Colt Emerson will learn from this. Jerry Dipoto had every right to say it. I don't believe he said it maliciously. And we move on. I hope that Colt Emerson is fine. I hope that he is back this year. I don't know that he will be. And if he's not, again, it will have been a learning experience that better to get now at 21 than at 26. So I thought this was much ado about nothing. Maybe some people just don't like Jerry, so they dislike the messenger in all of this, but I did not have a problem with any of it. All right, let's wrap up here. The Mariners will play 3 games in Milwaukee against the Milwaukee Brewers. Now, 2 things here. The Brewers are the best team in baseball. They do all the little things well. They don't hit home runs. They don't strike out. They run a lot. They play great defense. They pitch well. They are the Tampa Bay Rays National League version. The Mariners are 1-5 against the Rays. Expect this series to be frustrating. Expect this series to be difficult. Expect the Brewers to do all of the little things that we wish the Mariners would do more consistently. That said, the Mariners are catching the Brewers in what I think is the best possible way you can catch them. It doesn't mean the Mariners are good enough to take advantage of it, but this is the best way you can find the Brewers. 1, the Brewers just had an emotional 4-game series in Los Angeles against the Dodgers, their primary competition in the National League. Maybe the Mariners can catch them on the backside of an emotional high. 2, The Brewers will play the Braves, another World Series contender in the National League this weekend. And they've got the Little League Classic in Williamsport, so they've got to travel to that game on Sunday like the Mariners did a year ago. So can they catch them on the backside of the emotional high and in the trap game before another emotional high this weekend? Maybe. Also, the Mariners are not going to see Logan Henderson or Jacob Misiorowski in this series. So if there's 3 pitchers you want to see in the Brewers rotation, the Mariners are seeing the right ones. Left-handed pitcher Kyle Harrison had a great start to the season. He's really struggled since, and he's been on the injured list with arm issues. Then they're going to see Dustin May, who came over in a trade from the Cardinals, who's had a better year this year, but has been hittable for much of the last several years. Then they're going to see left-handed pitcher Robert Gasser, who's coming off his own Tommy John surgery and just came back not that long ago. So these are the 3 guys to see. Now, 2 of them are lefties, which makes it inherently tougher for the Mariners. We don't know about Victor Robles' health. We don't know about Taylor Ward's health. So I'm not telling you it's going to be easy. All I'm saying is that if there's a time to see the Brewers, this is the time and the way to see the Brewers. That'll do it for us. We are back at it again on Thursday with our ESPN MLB Insider Buster Olney. I appreciate all of you as always. The Mariners 4 games back in the division. You can follow us, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Subscribe for free. You can read us at marinersroundtable.com. Hit join on the free community. Have your thoughts heard on our message board style bottom of our homepage there. It's a lot of fun. We want you to be a part of the conversation. You can go and do that for free as well. Buster Olney with me on Thursday. Mariners and Brewers Tuesday through Thursday. And as always, go M's.